Like that can help manage your levels effectively. Remember, knowledge is power. Talk to your doctor about your cholesterol levels and work together to create a plan for better heart health. Managing cholesterol isn't just about numbers, it's about protecting your life. This message is brought to you by what? Wash 94.9 FM and supported by Flock's Wash Health Foundation. A healthy heart starts with healthy choices. Let's work together for a healthier future.
Good evening, Lagos. Check now. It is 1 minute past 8 o'clock from our studios. Wash 94.9 FM, your number one fun health radio. Very nice to have your company again this evening. Welcome to Boiling Point Arena, the platform where we dissect Nigeria's economy, politics, and the policies shaping our daily lives. And tonight, we confront a pressing issue: Nigeria's economic crisis. Hardship is biting harder despite government palliatives. So, when will Nigerians begin to breathe? Now, let's get it right. Over to you, Dr. Ayo, the convener of Boiling Point Arena.
It's very easy to all one word. Well, the president today to talk about how Nigeria is balanced and hardship to other government. They want to also say that when here a notable public affairs, we can breathe. So that they were and I am by grace, granting management in Harvard medicine and insecurity management. It's just for both trips. But I don't know where I'll come over to you. In a moment, I'll come over to you. We want to thank our media partners. We speak. There's a media convergence. We're doing a town hall via Zoom. One of the ones privileged to have 3 radio stations that are joining this issue conversation, talking about a situation where we are to speak the live studio of Wash 94.9 FM. We are also being joined by Sweet 107.1 FM and Roots 97 within a lot of 1 FM. By the grace of God, next week, next month, we will have like 1 station joining us from the South and also a cable television also wanting to also partner out. What this means is that we are doing a service for the Nigerian people. The Boiling Point Arena is not political, it's dealing with issues of good governance and nation building. By the way, I must just introduce to you our keynote speaker that is talking about low balance of Sakamat in a bid to be one of us and having the discourse. Welcome on Boiling Point. Now let me go over to Dr. to management guests in Harvard medicine.
Thank you so much.
Management. But
Partnering in crime.
I'll come back to you.
Now,
The moment I'll come back.
right, I've been revealing the profile of Ṣeun Onigbinde. Ṣeun is a Nigerian entrepreneur, still big technology and financial transparency. Born in 1983 in Zaria and studied electrical engineering at the University of Agriculture and Abeokuta.
Conversation.
Now known as now.
The situation we
funded budget
to speak.
promotes transparency and accountability in government and its advocacy efforts, which have helped government actors to be set up in their budgetary process. He has garnered accolades such as the Ashoka Fellowship and the Courts Africa 30 Innovators Award. He has presented at esteemed venues like Chatham House and the Skull Foundation Summit, named a young global leader by the World Economic Forum in 2023. Oluseun serves on various boards and advisory committees, including the Cost of Governance Reform Committee and the One Africa Policy Advisory Board. With a background in engineering and executive education from Stanford University, communication, journalism, and engineering media, emerging media at Kennesaw State University in Greater Atlanta, USA, where he teaches a wide range of undergraduate and graduate courses, friend and partner in crime. Christopher Kperogi is the author of several books. Right, I've been revealing global English of the changing the face and Ṣeun is a Nigerian entrepreneur, global world, big technologies and financial transparency. So his book advocate has contributed to numerous conferences in Zaria and studied the electrical engineering at the University of Agriculture and Abeokuta. Now known as now, operated funded budgets at the 17th promotes transparency and online in government and its advocacy efforts, which have helped government actors and to set up in their budgetary process and mass Ghana accolades such as Canada in 2019. Before relocating to the United States, Professor Kperogi worked as a staff writer, reporter, news editor, and features editor at notable Nigerian publications including Daily Trust, New Nigerian, Senior Newsweek, and Daily Triumph. He also served communications unit in the Nigerian President's Office and worked as a part-time journalism lecturer at the Kaduna Polytechnic in Nigeria. In April 2014, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette's Department of Communication honored him as its outstanding alumnus. He was also recognized with Kennesaw State University School of Communication and Media's Outstanding Research and Creativity Award in 2016 and 2017. Professor Kperogi previously served as managing editor of the Atlanta Review of Journalism History, a referred academic journal. Additionally, he was the associate director of research at Georgia University Center for International Media Education for 4 years. For more than 13 years, he wrote 2 widely popular weekly newspaper columns, Notes from Atlanta in Daily Trust on Saturday, formerly Weekly Trust, and Politics of Grammar in Daily Trust on Sunday, formerly Sunday Trust. In December 2018, its Note from Atlanta column was discontinued in Daily Trust under pressure from the Nigerian presidency. However, since October 2018, the column had also been published on the back page of Saturday Tribune, Nigeria's oldest privately owned English language newspaper, ensuring its continuity. Mr. Kperogi earned his PhD in public communication from Georgia State University's Department of Communication, where he taught journalism for 5 years and received the Outstanding Academic Achievement in Graduate Studies Award.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ariyo. It's time to reel out a prologue on the subject matter. The issue on the front burner today is a simple one. Why is hunger, hardship, and sufferings biting harder despite the many economic policies, measures, reforms, and the rollout of palliatives running into billions of naira introduced by the Nigerian government? Nigeria, the acclaimed giant of Africa, is in an economic mess. There's no argument about that. As a nation, we have been grappling with economic challenges for decades, with each succeeding regime contributing more to the problems rather than providing real solutions to get the country out of the doldrums. And so it is succinct to mention that the present government, led by President Bola Tinubu, is not solely responsible for the economic mess that we are in as a country. Be that as it may, since the Tinubu era began on May 29, 2023, life and living for the overwhelming majority of the Nigerian populace have become so harrowing and increasingly becoming like hell. And this is not only for people one would ordinarily adjudge as poor, but in Nigeria today, it's a case of the rich also cry. The angst of the people is deafening and loud enough to the extent that even a sitting governor, Adamu Fintiri of Adamawa State, had to raise alarm to President Tinubu over a week ago, as published in the national dailies, that Nigerians are bleeding. With prices of food and essential household needs hitting almost the roof, today's Nigeria is a disaster waiting to happen. In the past, the phrase, "no food for lazy man," is a truism in Nigeria. But in this ongoing dispensation, the reality is that it is not only the jobless that face hard time. Hardship is now the in thing for many Nigerians who should have comfortably been grouped as senior middle class citizens, to the extent that even many top civil servants, directors, professors, et al. Can no longer afford to put their cars on the roads, while many are already disposing those vehicles off, given the unbearable cost of petrol at about 1,000 naira a litre. Well, the good thing is that President Tinubu continues to row hard the ship of the economy and pressing forward with hope, with the renewed hope agenda. Even though many of these reforms, policies, and economic measures and the deployment of palliatives have not quite yielded much fruit. Courtesy of the twin policies of petroleum subsidy, removal, and floating of the naira, the result has been hyperinflation, unemployment, and increased poverty. Well, the relevant question that everyone that are seated in the comfort of their homes, hooked to boiling point arena, what we are waiting to hear is, when will Nigerians breathe? Or better still, when is succor and respite going to come to hapless Nigerians? Well, thank you very much. That is the prologue. Quickly, I will bring up the keynote speaker, the Olowo of Owu, very good-loving monarch, a monarch that loves discourses, that wants, I have not seen him in parties. Rather, you see him in Abeokuta, in Lagos, Abuja, attending discourses. And then thumbs up to Kabiyesi, Oba Saka Matemilola. Kabiyesi, you have the floor, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arojolu. Can I confirm that I'm audible on all sides? Hello?
We're with you. You are loud and clear.
Thank you very much. We had a bit of technical issue earlier on. I hope we'll just stay on top of that so that our audience can really enjoy this session today. So let me welcome everybody to today's session of Boiling Point Arena, a session where we normally will dissect issues that are of grave national importance to all of us, ordinary Nigerians, the policymakers, and everybody. And the whole idea is to bring in experts who are able to throw light on these critical issues, in a dispassionate, in a way that the ordinary Nigerians can really understand, what the critical issues are and how it does affect them and what they can do about some of these issues personally. Let me welcome Professor Farooq Kperogi. He's been with us a number of times already, and we really enjoyed each of the sessions that he had with us. Prof, thank you very much for joining us again today. Mr. Ṣeun Onigbinde, thank you very much for all the good work you're doing, in our country and with budget IT that you initiated and you run. Again, that's another very important person who can help us dissect most of these issues that we're faced with right now in Nigeria. Thank you, Dr. Arojolu, for providing a comprehensive explanation of what the critical issues are right now. So I won't take much of your time. I just want to leave the floor to our discussants. But before doing that, I must thank our partner radio stations for supporting us all the while. Again, we are live on Facebook as well for those who may want to join via Facebook. And I want to wish everybody a good and productive session this evening today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kabiyesi. Well, we go straight to the firing line of the arena that is boiling. And I'm going to take on Professor Farooq Kperogi. And just like Dr. Ariyo said, he said he has welcomed you boilingly. That's the slang that we use on the platform. And let me make you blush a little bit. Professor Farooq is wearing 3 caps. He has won the 3rd cap today. Nobody has had that honor. He featured sometimes in 2023, he featured in 2024, and he featured in 2025. Perhaps the only other person who has come close to wearing the 2nd cap is Senator Okurumu, and also Commodore Professor Kunle Olawumi. Well, each time Professor Farooq Kperogi is here on Boiling Point, you better get ready. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me start in an unusual way. It is clear to the blind that we are in a sorry pass as a nation. But this nation is great. Nigeria is a great nation, and Nigeria will be great. But where we are, Professor Dr. Kayode Fayemi said something last week. Many people thought that maybe he's one of the deserters of the APC, maybe because he didn't get contract, maybe because he didn't get appointment. But that is not the truth. The way public relation is, you admit where there is challenges. And what he has said, he said he want to apologize to Nigerians that they have failed to deliver the promise. When you look at what the president also say and the president's men, they will tell you, there's no regrets in the first subsidy. We are doing a lot of things, and don't worry, things will normalize very soon. You look at all this scenario in that context and just tell me about Nigeria. That's the way I will put it, Professor Farooq.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so very much, Doctor, for having me the third time. I don't take the honor lightly. I know there are a lot of voices, a lot of experts, a lot of angry and patriotic Nigerians at home and abroad who could share their thoughts and views and perspectives with your listeners. But somehow you've chosen to invite me for the third time. I see this as your acknowledgement of my passion for Nigeria.
All right.
Excuse me. Although I'm geographically distant from Nigeria, I'm emotionally and psychologically connected to the country. And the pains that Nigerians feel are felt by me vicariously. That is, although I don't feel those pains in personal terms, I feel them on behalf of Nigerians because, first of all, my background, I have said that multiple times in my writings that I grew up poor and that I have gotten to where I am today because I have enjoyed subsidized education and I have enjoyed all kinds of subsidies. So I do not want the ladder to be broken that I used to climb up, if you would accept that metaphor. You recall that the first time I appeared on this show in 2023, when the effect of the double whammy of subsidy removal and currency devaluation hadn't taken place, I made predictions that materialized with almost mathematical exactitude. I think that was what informed your re-inviting me in 2024.
Exactly.
Because I said something and I said the way these double policies were going to draw Nigeria back to the Stone Age. That's what I said. And it hadn't happened then. And by 2024, according to the doctor, a lot of Nigerians were living in the Stone Age, for all practical purposes. And the reason for my prediction, I didn't have a crystal ball. I don't have any predictive powers. I have no oracular powers, but it was based on my study of societies, neoliberalism, the economic policies, the reforms that the Tinubu administration is implementing. It's a sort of policy that prioritizes markets at the expense of people. We live in a world where we have two systems of managing the economy. There's a system that prioritizes markets, and there's a system that prioritizes people. Sometimes we can go extreme in both directions. The people who prioritize markets say we need the markets to be buoyant, we need the markets to flourish so that they can create jobs that will not benefit the people. Sometimes they call that the trickle down. So put a lot of emphasis on rich people. Let them get companies, let them make profits, and they're going to employ people. But historically, we've realized that that's not always the case. When the markets are thriving, when the markets are smiling, the people don't automatically smile and laugh as well. But we also have this other one where we say prioritize the people. Let the economic policy be on the people, the everyday folks, the middle class, that the health of every society is measured by the vitality of its middle class. And when you have a vital middle class, when you have a buoyant middle class, when you have a middle class that is self-sufficient, that is self-reliant, the society progresses because the middle class is the lifeblood of every modern society. But we can go extreme in that direction and ignore businesses because you need businesses to thrive as well. What we need in Nigeria is a system that marries these two extremes. We can have the markets thriving and we can have the people, thriving as well. But what we have seen in the last few years since Tinubu came to power is that we see a man who is seduced by the false promises of neoliberal salvation. The idea that we can get the markets working and smiling, and that somehow the people are also going to smile and laugh. But that's not what is happening. And my knowledge of reading histories and economies and in other countries, maybe as discussion progresses, we're going to talk about Argentina. It's another country that is implementing these extreme neoliberal policies where the Western press, the Western financial press, they praise this country about they have a balanced budget, they have a budget surplus and all of that. But the people, I have friends in Argentina and I read up on their country. They have gone from a poverty rate of maybe 20-something% to now almost 60% of the country is poor. Subsidies have been slashed. The markets are smiling, but the people, there's growth. The markets are growing, but the people are growling. I love to make that contrast between growth and growling. And if they have a chance, they would go back to what they used to be. The other people-centered administrations that ignored the markets. So we live in a country where we have leaders who are held hostage by what I call cultural cringe. What is cultural cringe? Cultural cringe emerges from a lack of faith in your own self, a perpetual worship of the foreign, of white people. The World Bank and IMF say this is how you need to develop. And then our people uncritically accept it because we have lost faith in our own self. So when you have people who are battling a devastating low ratio self-esteem, they become susceptible to the manipulation of white people in Washington, D.C. And they ignore homegrown domestic policies that are sensitive to the peculiarities of the society, to the cultures of the society. So we have people who say, arguing that removing fuel subsidies will pauperize the people, would wipe out the middle class is not an economic argument. What is an economic argument? I don't know. But every economic policy whose goal is not to lift the people from the clutches of poverty, whose goal is not to elevate the status of people, whose goal is not to increase the health of the middle class and to bring up people from poverty into the middle class, I don't know what that economic policy is. It's completely pointless. So we live in a society, that Nigerian society is a society whose culture is deeply rooted in helping people. And that's what the word subsidy means. It's Latin word for assistance, for help. So when you implement an economic policy that has roots in the West, where assistance is at the core of the economy. I wrote an article some time ago about the cost of petrol being almost the same, in fact, or a little cheaper in Atlanta, where I live, than in Nigeria. And people were incredulous. They thought I was making that up. And a few days ago, a Nigerian visited me and I hosted him in my home, and we drove around. And I took him to where I filled my tank. And I said, well, he probably read my column. He said he did. And he saw it there. And we did a calculation. He said, absolutely correct. Fuel is a little cheaper in Atlanta than it is in Nigeria. But why is it cheaper? It's cheaper because it's subsidized. It's $2.07 per gallon. We buy in gallons in the United States. And a gallon is 4 liters. So we did a calculation. And then he saw that per liter, by my mathematical something is not it's not great, but someone may be able to do it. But what we discovered was that it was almost the same. And then I said, do you know how much the real cost of a gallon is? He didn't know. And I said, go and check that article. It's supposed to be $15, at least $15 per gallon. But we buy it for $2.07. Why? Because it's subsidized. And this is the United States, the patron saints of capitalism. But you are telling me that in Nigeria, where the minimum wage is 70,000 naira, which is equivalent to, I don't know what it is, maybe $40. And in the country, in the United States, where the minimum wage is supposed to be $7.25, but almost no one pays that. It's always higher. My 15-year-old daughter works on weekends, and she's paid $13 per hour. But so compare these countries. And each time I make this point, people say, well, the United States is a wealthy country. Nigeria is not. Fair point. However, why is it that in Nigeria we have an executive, we have elites that are whose lifestyles are subsidized by the people, by the government? In the United States, the president pays for his own meals. If he invites someone to his house, or you have all these gatherings, they pocket. There's no budget for the president to pay for meals, but in Nigerian budget is billions. And I wrote an article a few weeks ago also about the fact that our budgets always have provisions for new cars, new computers, new everything every single year. And I compare that with the budgeting process in the United States. That does not happen. There's a life cycle of these things that's supposed to 5 years. So we have here a country where the elites are not subsidized the same way they are in
Prof.
Nigeria. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry to just cut in there.
Okay.
Yes, I know you. You can. This
I'm
thing,
passionate about these things. So
this thing are just at the tip of the finger.
Yes.
You've said it all. Dr. Ario, my co-uncle here, is already inkling to to take on maybe Ṣeun Onigbinde, but you said it. I remember you said once you remove petroleum subsidy and combine it with the floating of the naira, that Nigerians will return to the Stone Age living. Well, we'll come back to that. Dr. Ario.
Thank you so much, brother. Bro, I should remind you, if you don't know, that we are friends on the social media on several
Oh,
and
okay. Thank you.
whatever you have ever written must have been read by me. A few hours ago, on my way from Port Novo, I read a report that the World Bank says that Nigeria remains the largest economy in Africa, with all the challenges that we are facing, which we know that has kept our economy shrinking. May I know your take on this, sir?
Well, I think being the largest economy has nothing to do with economic vitality. I think it's all just about the size. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. So there's a lot of economic activity that takes place by virtue of our population. So China's economy, for instance, is the second largest economy, and it's on track to becoming the largest economy in the world because of the sheer size of the country. The United States has also benefited from its size. It's the third most populous country in the world. And so when you account for the sophistication in its economy, all the innovations that take place, plus the population, it's no wonder why it's been the most populous, the biggest economy in the world. The biggest economy in Europe is Germany, and it's also because of its population, in addition to all these other innovation. So the World Bank saying we are the largest economy, it really doesn't say much. It's merely an acknowledgement of a fact, and that fact is our population and the economic activities that our population enables. But as you rightly said, courtesy of the policies they have recommended, in fact, imposed on our people. Our economy may be large, but it does not serve our people. Our people are writhing in pain. People are dying in installments because of policies they have imposed on our people and that our people have accepted because, and we're going to get into that. Why did they accept these policies when they know that they hurt the people? Well, they are tied to loans. They give you loans, and those loans come with conditionalities. And our people are not creative enough to think of independent ways of generating resources to run their country. And so we have a situation where the justification for accepting, for introducing, for removing fuel subsidies, devaluing the currency, increasing tariffs, is that we need to generate money to run government, to build infrastructure. But what has happened over the years since this so-called total removal of subsidies is that we are still borrowing from the World Bank. So that reason has been X'd out. Two, there's no infrastructure being built. There's no rail transportation of the kind that they promised would be implemented if subsidies were removed. The only thing that has changed is that governors have more money in their coffers than they've ever had. Yet, they cannot implement the 70,000 minimum wage. Although they say they're implementing 70,000 minimum wage, the reality is that it's not being truly implemented. The lowest worker gets 70,000, but there's no corresponding increase in the salaries of higher people. So it's a scam. So more governors have more money than they've ever had, and that's where it stops. Infrastructure is not being built. We are still borrowing money from the World Bank and the IMF, and the people are writhing in pain. They are suffering. There's torment in the land. And this fills me with a lot of sadness.
Thank you so much, Prof. We're taking it to another level. Year in, year out, the executive that have the deepest insights into expected income for the following year, using the metrics, we come up with a budget and forward it to the National Assembly for review, ratification, and approval. What do we have? They always load up the budget and get it bigger. And I'm asking, when the man who has the idea of the income ratio prepares the budget, and you that has no idea about how they will arrive at the sum decides to inflate the budget, for me, it's a confusing situation. Number two, we've never connected the budget of the previous year with the budget of the incoming year. The reason why there is harmony in our budget process. Where do you stand in all of this?
Where I stand is, what I have always said, I think the budgeting process in Nigeria is a scam. It's a legalized scam. Why do I call it? Saying this, frankly, is not earth-shattering. Almost everyone knows. Budget items are inflated. A new expression was introduced to Nigeria during Buhari's time: budget padding. We know the budgets provide instruments for legalized institutional theft of our national patrimony. So trying to rationalize Nigerian budget, for me, and maybe Mr. Onigbinde is going to give us some clarity on this because he's the expert.
Okay.
But from my own perspective, as just a non-expert observer, the budgets are a source of emotional strain. I started monitoring the budgets from the time Buhari became president because for some reason he sort of inspired this glimmer of hope that maybe things could be done differently. based on the assurances he gave and based on the fact that he had been president, he had been head of state, messed up, and had a chance to be out of government for an extended period, there was this expectation that the interregnum between being head of state who messed up and being out of government for a very long time gave him time to reflect and to think of ways he could make things better. And the sort of people who were around him, how he was sold. So it inspired a little confidence that maybe things could be done differently. Plus, change was the mantra of the campaign. So we started looking at the budget, and then a lot of those items made no sense at all. We called attention to them, and we thought things were going to be done differently in response to this cacophony of complaints about how the budgets were made. But nothing changed, and it's gotten worse over the years. So maybe Mr. Onigbinde is going to give us some perspective on
So
the
the
budgets.
next
But
question,
frankly,
naturally, we go
yeah.
to Mr. Onigbinde.
Yes, yes.
So I'm sorry if I've kept you quiet, and it's because I'm coming your way with a bomb.
Before you drop that bomb, I just got a message from Adekunle Oderinde all the way from London. Well done. We are really enjoying this drift with Farooq. Let's Ṣeun Onigbinde busting massively.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, to Onigbinde, what do you believe are the most significant challenges to achieving transparency and accountability in Nigeria's government?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity and for this. It's a pleasure being here today. And I like your question. You say, what are the biggest challenges in achieving transparency and accountability? And it's the political culture, nothing else beyond that. The political culture is wasteful if it's not driven by accountability, if it's not wired to promote equity, if it's also driven by short-termism. So everybody is on the take, how much can I take? I'm appointed today and I could be unappointed tomorrow, if you allow me to use that. So 2 years, 3 years, 1 year I have in there, I'm rambling, I'm running up and down to get as much as I can. And that's the culture. There's a very funny adage that says, I've heard well, that this culture is what you promote and what you punish. The culture of our political class is what has created this weave of corruption and has not made public resources to be efficiently spent. And just because there is no punishment for bad behavior, or there's no punishment that is significant enough for bad behavior. People who have been abused public privileges or public position, they figured out a way to use technical approaches and technical language to evade accountability or to evade punishment. So in some sort of way, everybody would believe that if I'm able to do it and I do it very, very big, so that maybe I have enough resources to sort out the system, there is no punishment that is actually coming my way. So that's my biggest challenge in terms of why we do not have a transparent accounting. Because when you have a transparent system, it's open and also accountable, which means citizens ask questions and there's feedback. And in that system is where you begin to tune towards efficiency as much as possible. But what you don't get with us is that we are not an efficient state. We take a whole lot of money from the people, take taxes from the people, but the people are not getting the quality of services. And all of this starts with the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy in Nigeria also understands that political office holders are looking at time and are here to benefit themselves. So they will actually ease the pathway for them to do that by inflating contracts, that supporting government resources, by delivering poor service delivery, by not accounting for anything, and that's how we've created that system. So if there's anything because when people talk about the president, maybe this won't be president, I say, what is the culture around this person? That's the question I always ask, the first question. I mean, President Buhari showed us a lie, because everybody assumed that On the minimum, he was a Spartan person who had a high sense of duty towards use of public resources. But we figured out within a year or two that all of that is not true. So when we look at a person and we analyze, diagnose the person, we have to ask ourselves honestly, because Nigerians do not interrogate leaders honestly. They are interrogate leaders who use identity, they interrogate leaders using assumptions or presumptions, or they even conclude the sentences for them about their personality. But we honestly look at the leader and says, does this leader, firstly, has this person always lived his life on the premise of service? Is this about public opportunity or service? When you first dimension that, yes, character. Does this person carry character, in some sort of way? Is there a sense of character that look around and say, okay, this person is honest, this person we can, because it is the shadow of a leader that the people also gravitate around. If a leader is corrupt or abused or has built a reputation of corruption over the years, you can't tell me that the people that he surrounds him do not understand that situation, do not take advantage of that environment. I remember when Buhari became president, the first press release by Garba Shehu was that Buhari has not authorized anybody to hold anybody at the border. Because even the immigration officers who are at the borders, we're already looking at some certain people who wanted to leave the country that it seems you can no longer, even without any instruction, without any order. Because there was a perception of cultural shift that is about to happen. But since people saw that it's also the same free-for-all system, they assume that there is no need for us to change India. So for me, we need to attack the political culture. And the way we do it, the kind of leaders that we put in there, and the high level of punishment that we're going to serve to people that abuse public resources, and also how we're going to reward people that have kept faith with sanctity of public resources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You said it all. We don't interrogate our leaders.
If I say it all, then we'll end the program.
But you are doing a good job.
Yeah, he said so much.
With the National Assembly.
Absolutely.
And it's like the fear of Ṣeun's budget is the beginning of wisdom. But yet, there have been no consequences. I'm talking about budget padding. Ṣeun, you must be disturbed. Seasons whereby principal officers of the National Assembly will be using their position to pad budgets. They will use it for constituency projects, divert it. You hear that some, what do we call, keke napep, some votes have gone to one obscure school in Lokoja, and where you now implement the budget now is somewhere in Ogun State or somewhere in, beyond raising alarm. When we know all these things, what has happened? And how has that been able to prevent a reoccurrence in the new budget that is already in the works?
Now, before he answers the question, let me remind you, we've had cases of IITA Ibadan being given contracts to construct roads in Lokoja.
Can you see?
Okay? And you wonder, since when has IITA becomes Julius Berger around that dimension? These things are happening, and everybody's behaving as if it's normal, as if it's our new normal. That plus what my brother asked, how do we break through with this?
Yes, Ṣeun.
Ṣeun, please.
I would say that. Thank you. I can hear you. Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to muting myself. But I would say that it's a painful thing. And even, it's like an indictment on the efforts that we have been making over the years as budgets. And this all things started in the last assembly. Constituency projects has been with us since 2003, if I'm right, since the Obasanjo days. And even in the US, there's what they call pork and barrel projects, where you have lawmakers steering projects to their constituency. But there's a limit, because even the US, where you look at, most of the spending is mandatory. A chunk of that spending has already been warehoused into mandatory. The kind of thing you can shift in the budget. It's not more than, it's not up to 5% of the entire budget. A chunk of things are already committed already over a long-term process. The budget is not like Nigeria where you start a road this year and next year you abandon the road. No, if you appropriate to do a road, it means that the allocation has been running to 2030. So you don't come every year and say, okay, we fund this road. That road would be due to completion because it's been appropriated for. Unlike us, National Assembly, they have abused what they call the power of the purse. And they signed with the last assembly, the 9th National Assembly, where you had people, especially, and it's when you're doing something, you're setting a bad trend. It started with, because you had 100 billion for constituency projects, and in the 100 billion size budget you put whatever you have in it. How they shared it was their own discretion. But the 100 billion in a budget of 16 trillion, a budget of 20 trillion, you feel like it's something in the democracy, because we all know that democracy is also about forbearances. So it's not as if everything is going to be perfect. The 100 billion in a 4 trillion naira budget, I can manage that. But when you now leave that and you start producing over 2,000 projects in the budget, valued around, close to like in trillions of naira, then there is a problem. There is a significant problem. And now you're not putting the projects are more on the basis of what are the national needs at that period. Because the biggest reason why you don't find development, and Nigeria's budget is not tied to development, it's tied mostly to individual interests. So you are not even asking myself, I'm trying to dig a ball for these people. Is this a priority in the order of national interests? Is this road most important use of public resource at this point? Are we not better off putting this road on possibly a Lagos, at the Ibadan or Oyo Ogbomosho road, which has been in construction since year 2020, year 2000? Is this road not better off delivered by local governments or by state government? Just last week, we had a clash in which the lawmaker wants to build a road, and the state government has already appropriated money in Oyo State for the same road. So the questions are remaining. So we have National Assembly members who now, because they are speaker, because they are a chairman of the appropriation committee, you now decide to turn around the entire constituency and now shake down agencies that if you want your budget to pass, put 100 million for me, put 200 million for me, put 500 million for me. You have made the national budget mean a provincial one, and it's extremely sad. Extremely sad. We have written at least 4 letters to the speaker. We have written to the appropriation chair. We have written to the Senate. I myself personally last time went to the floor of the National Assembly, engaged lawmakers, engaged the chairman of Senate House of Rep Committee on national planning on this issue. He's from Ogun State. We spoke to him. He committed to do something differently. Stop picking my calls. So those are the scenarios that we have found ourselves. We then get the majority leader of the House on this issue. And we're just waiting for the 2027 budget, and we're going to ask ourselves this question. Are we ready? Is this the same thing we're going to do all over again? Because we have made the case. I also hear that the president has made the case on this issue to the National Assembly. And the National Assembly member I've heard will have £1 billion naira in this budget for their constituency project. So we also have come to a point where we're now incentivizing it. The question that if you even stay within a bound of £1 billion naira, that's 469 billion. But no, we know that some people will go as far as putting up to 10 billion naira for themselves in the budget, and the president will go ahead and sign it. And once the president signs it, they start harassing lawmakers, they start harassing accountant general, they start harassing civil servants to show that those projects are done at their own, as they will it or as they want it to be. Okay. It is disturbing, and we cannot get a national development that way.
Thank you very much, Ṣeun. I would want to ask you this question before we go back to Professor Kperogi. Meanwhile, somebody said, I think Emeritus Professor Ayoka Debambo, how we want budget for a new car every year, budget for car maintenance and house rent every year, replace kitchen furniture and utensils every year, and budget millions of naira for food and entertainment snacks. We talk, we cry, but they cannot be bothered. But in any case, I will want to give you a privilege to, weigh in on the petroleum subsidy matter, just like Professor Farooq said, whether peradventure you will have maybe a different view. It's our problem, the current suffering, the hardship, the being power thing. Is it as a direct fallout of the removal of petroleum subsidy? Thank you.
And before he answers the question, let me also add, why do we buy photocopiers, laptops, computers, furnitures, kitchen utensils every year? Are they so easily disposable? Whereas in our private lives, my laptop is 15 years old and it's still serving me. The microwave oven in my kitchen is over 10 years. The gas cooker is over 12 years. I can go on and on. So why do we make annual provision for all of these items, making them seem easily disposable?
So he has those two questions to answer. Ṣeun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big point that you have made in there, as much as possible, and I have to just say that you know this continuous buying the same item over and over and over and over again. It's an abuse of appropriation process. What you see most times is that, number one, there are sometimes those things, there are people that put things in the budget for the opportunity of graft. So it's not because the treasury might give them money to buy it, but if it's, you just won't forget the budget, it's a law, it's an appropriation act. So you will find people continuously, when the budget is out, they don't even check anything. They just rework it. They just put the same amount and the same numbers there, and they just go and submit it. Some deliberately just do that so that there's an opportunity to constantly buy those things as much as possible. And you expect, and I remember when Dr. Kemi Adeosun, Ms. Kemi Adeosun, when she came on board, she said, let us centralize every overhead procurement. If you want to buy a printer, a laptop, a copier, let there be a central pool where you are requesting for, so that we can hold it. How many do you have existing? How much are you buying? So that you don't buy 100 this year and you go ahead and buy another one next year. You don't buy. So, well, at the end of the day, that idea was weakened. It was killed. But it didn't get to see the light of the day. So my whole point is that, and she called it efficiency unit, if I remember then, is that it's an aberration of our judgment. And like I mentioned, our budget is not tied to plan. It's not like I put it like contract in the machine. Just put up a long list of items and invest in education. We don't ask ourselves if is this money we're putting in education, is it increasing literacy? Is it increasing numeracy? What is the quality of students that we are churning out from this school? We are not. All we do is that we want to be classrooms. I want to be classrooms because building classroom is what brings out the contract. It's not the training of the teachers. It's not even testing the students and having a national policy on the basis of that. Those are the issues that I have found. And when you look at it, the government has taken some very drastic decisions, like Professor said, around which were like we would call them liberal decisions. You expect that you have to balance the side of two equations. If you take on these very extreme decisions, those two twin decisions around the parity in the exchange rate and the removal of first subsidy, if you take those decisions, we also want to show a bit of responsibility on the side of government, that we are in solidarity with the people. There's nothing that shows the Nigerian government has carried on with a level of sobriety to understand that the people are actually in pain. They've bought new jets, they bought new cars, they bought a yacht, they've continued, we have more ministers than we ever had. We have more assistants than we ever had. We have at least 5 or 6 people in the Ministry of Info speaking for the president in different approach. So that's the situation. The size of government is not just, there's nothing signaling to the people that we are in dire straits, and that's the pain point for me in terms of how this government has approached governance. The monetary side is tightening, but the fiscal side is released. So somehow, the equation is not balanced.
Okay, thank you, Ṣeun. Let me go to Professor Farooq. Well, I will be asking you if you would not be thumbing up for the president. Let's give it to him. He has been able to repair two hitherto moribund refineries. And I think we are beginning to having fuel locally, whether it is blending or refining, but at least there's availability of fuel. What one may be complaining about now is that it is beyond the reach of people. I have seen professors, they no longer go to work with their cars. Many of them have sold their cars. Meanwhile, as you take that question, Dr. Ayedun Ṣẹ́gun Isaiah from Abeokuta is asking the question, why is it that government continues to spend money on palliatives that has no positive effect on Nigerians? Is it reasonable to be dashing out money to purchase costly goods and commodities without working out how our economy will be reviewed? Placing Nigerian politicians in government on civil service payment will reduce corruption in our society. What is your own take? And finally, he said, if you are made Minister of Finance, Professor Farooq, how will you rescue Nigeria from this economic hardship?
Let me throw in a client. Subsidy was removed. Prices were charged up. Now we're being given palliatives. Are we not giving back with the left hand? Or was taken with the right hand? Thank you, sir.
Exactly. You know, that's what English people call being penny wise and pound foolish. Penny wiseness and pound foolishness is when you pretend to save money by not doing something and you end up spending even more money, to do what you say you weren't going to do. I'm not an economist, but I read someone who did the tabulation, who calculated how much had been spent on palliatives since the removal of subsidies, and compared it with how much was alleged to have been paid for subsidies. And it turned out that more money is being spent, or because we don't know whether this money is actually spent. But based on what is calculated, more money is being spent to provide palliatives than was spent to subsidize. So, and I want to begin by saying, first of all, that the current situation we are in now didn't just start now. It started with a very systematic, well-planned, well-oiled demonization of subsidies. It has gotten to the point where people have come to accept that subsidies are bad for them. And before this state, I was like one of the lone voices in the wilderness saying, look, guys, when they say subsidies, it means assistance. There's no country on earth where government does not give assistance, because there's an unwritten social contract between the people who are governed and the people who govern. And that unwritten social contract basically says, look, you are going to give up your sovereignty, your personal sovereignties, to us as your rulers. And in exchange for that, we give you security. And part of that security is not just security from physical harm, it's security from hunger. But right now, that social contract has been torn into shreds. And we have given people in power the opportunity or the privilege to basically, I'm echoing, and it's very uncomfortable. Can we take care of this echo?
Okay.
Okay, so I am basically saying that, first of all, there's no reason why subsidies should be removed. In my earlier intervention, I talked about how the United States government, or the states that subsidize in here, not the federal government, but in my state, the government is subsidizing petrol for like, it's supposed to be $15, but we pay $2 7 cents on average. In some places, you might find $2.09, maybe a few other places, 3 cents. You do the math and see how much money the government is subsidizing so that it's accessible to us. So the idea that subsidies are bad, it's a fraud. It's intellectual fraud. There's nowhere on earth that subsidies don't exist. They either exist in terms of, like in the United States, the pump price, or in Europe by providing highly efficient subsidized mass transit, so that having your own car is a luxury. And if you can afford that luxury, by all means, go ahead and do it. But we have a country where there's no systematic, well-planned mass transportation system, where owning a car is not a luxury, but a necessity. And then you have a government that says subsidizing the means through which people transport themselves from point to point is somehow an unearned privilege for the people. So we have given up our personal sovereignties to people to be our rulers, but the part of the bargain that they were supposed to observe has been thrown, and no one is saying anything about it. So if I were to be Minister of Finance, of course, I would never be Minister of Finance. One, because I don't even pretend to be an economist. And should I somehow find myself in it, I probably wouldn't last a day because of the very structure of the Nigerian society. And a column I wrote some time ago, made reference to Mahathir, the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, when that part of the world was hit by a devastating economic crisis. They all went to the World Bank and said, "Save us, we're in trouble." The World Bank's recommendation then is the same as it is today, which is that it's a remove subsidies, devalue your currency, increase tariffs. And the Prime Minister said that made absolutely no sense. How can we be in turmoil? How can we be beset by crisis? And you were asking me to exacerbate the crisis by making the people poorer? That didn't make any sense to me. So he was the only prime minister, he was the only leader in Southeast Asia who said no to the World Bank and IMF. What did he do? He increased subsidies. He did the exact opposite of what they said he should do. And so and what happened? Malaysia was the only country in Southeast Asia that was hit by the same economic crisis to rise above it, to overcome, to become prosperous. And he was interviewed some time ago, shortly after that, and they said, "Why did you buck the IMF?" He said, "It made no sense. And it's probably because I'm not an economist. I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to know economics. I'm not a financial guru. So I did what was commonsensical. And the common sense saved my people. But people who are experts in economics, I note that his finance minister and the deputy prime minister were all against him. These are all well-trained Western economists who said he was going against the grain and that he was going to lead the country into an even worse economic crisis. But that didn't happen. So maybe it's not even far-fetched that someone like me, who has no degree in economics, who doesn't pretend to be a financial expert, could be a finance minister. But were I to be that, I would just use common sense. And what's the common sense? What is in the best interest of the people, the everyday folks? I would not endorse an economic policy that hollows out the middle class, that decimates the poor, that gives subsidies to the rich. Because what we have seen is that they took subsidies away from the poor and retained it with the rich. As Onigbinde said earlier, we have more ministers now than we've ever had. And all these ministers have special advisors and special assistants. We have more people speaking for the president and the government than we have ever had in the history of Nigeria. We had a president who also ordered a brand new official car for himself. In the United States, the replacement cycle for cars for the president is at least 10 years. Donald Trump just became president. He's using the car that Joe Biden used. Joe Biden is using the car that in fact Obama used. So we have a country that takes subsidies away from the poor, demonizes subsidies for the poor, make the poor feel guilty for even enjoying subsidies that should be given to them as a matter of right, in acknowledgement of the personal sovereignty that I've given up for people in power. Now, no one talks about this. If you recall, Doctor, the first time I appeared on your show, there were people who are defending the government. And I said, let's have a discussion about the subsidies for the rich, for the political elite. And they said, no, 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 no. That was a no-go area. That was not. But the time has come for that conversation because you are giving palliatives. What are palliatives? Palliatives are things that ease a pain without curing the pain, something that eases without curing. What we need is medicine, not palliatives. Palliatives don't solve anything. They just provide a temporary solution to a lifelong problem. And a nation that spends more money on palliatives than it spends on medicine is a nation that is not even prepared to make the first move to progress, to prosperity. Is everyone here?
The cost or the price of crude oil globally is going up, and the higher it goes, the more Nigerians are made to pay for energy at the local level. We have campaigned that local energy demand must be priced as the national sector of the economy, whereas the global and other sides should be priced at the trade side of the economy. But nobody is listening to it. And I'm asking, how do you justify economic policies that enriches the federal government, whereas the people of Nigeria gets poorer and poorer?
That's right. I mean, it was a point I made in one of my columns since 2012 that Nigeria has the unfortunate situation where citizens do not celebrate increase in the price of crude, in the international price of crude. That should be a source of joy for us because it means more money is coming to the federal coffers, and therefore more resources would enable more infrastructure for the people. But if I'm in Nigeria, if I live in Nigeria and I hear that the crude, the international price of crude has fallen, I'll celebrate. Of course, that celebration itself is not even justified because it doesn't really affect the price of local production. The only thing it does is increase. When there's an increase in the international price of crude, there's typically an increase in the domestic pump price. But when there's a reduction, we don't see that reflected in the domestic pump price. The only time in the history of Nigeria, in my lifetime, that a government was forced to reduce the pump price of petrol after a drastic fall in the price of the international crude was during Yar'Adua's administration, when he reduced the pump price of crude by $10, by 10 naira. And that was also because there was consistent, concerted, well-planned effort by civil society, by people in the middle class. That was when that happened. But that had never happened. That has never been repeated. So we all know that the price regime of the pump price regime in Nigeria is unnatural, is not reflective of economic realities. We just have a bunch of rapacious, vulturistic cabal that is intent on not just killing the people, but feeding on their carcass. And they are enabled in this act by people in positions of power, people in positions of political power, because there's a nexus between those who are in positions of economic power and people who are in positions of political power. And they are united. They might have disagreements in some areas, but they are united in their common goal of keeping the masses of our people oppressed, poor, and hopeless. And why is that? Because then the people become easily manipulatable. They become susceptible to the wiles of people in power, and they can become instruments for all kinds of primordial mobilizations. So yes, it is true that the refineries two refineries are said to be working, although I'm not quite sure about the facticity of this statement, because we haven't quite seen any.
Sorry, Prof. Are you also a doubter like former President Olusegun Obasanjo? You remember?
Hello, you're breaking. Your voice.
Are you also a doubter like former President Obasanjo, who said that refinery will never work? But they asked Baba to come and visit.
I actually, people who follow me on Facebook will probably be familiar with the joke I shared on Facebook that sort of went viral on that platform,
Right.
and that caused me a lot of insults from people in government. And the joke went, and it was sent to me. I asked someone who is an oil industry expert whether indeed the refinery in Port Harcourt was working. And he forwarded to me the picture of Air Nigeria. Is it Nigeria Air or Air Nigeria? I don't know what it's called. The Phantom airline that the Buhari administration said it was going to launch. And so he said, I don't know what he means by this. Of course, everyone knows Air Nigeria or Nigerian Air. It was a phantom project about which a lot of money was spent, a lot of fanfare, but it never took off. It never took flight. So I have no way of verifying whether indeed these refineries are working. Okay. But what is important to me as an ordinary Nigerian who is rooted in the pains of ordinary Nigerians is that this refinery has not had any qualitative effect in the everyday lives of everyday folks. So that's what is important. If the refineries are working and the domestic production that they enable obviate the need for paying all kinds of fees that are associated with importation, and therefore it causes the pump price of petrol to come down, to be affordable, and to affect all facets of society, I will celebrate. But it's frankly pointless whether they are working. What is important is what effect this has had on the everyday folks in Nigeria. That's what matters to me.
Thank you very much, Professor Farooq. Well, I'll be bringing up Ṣeun Onigbinde, but let me mention that I'm going to also reel out some messages that today we will open up the floor for interaction very early. In another 5 minutes or so, I will have time to exhaust all the shades of opinion. I'll be asking Mr. Onigbinde, in the palliative economy that we have in Nigeria, is it becoming, the norm? What the leaders want people to do, that beggarly thing. Recall that this thing happened in Ibadan with the former YO Lori and that broadcaster, Oriyomi, that, a lot of our children died there because they were scavenging for food. And when the president was doing his broadcast, remember that interview, the way he waved off the things, he said, after all, I myself, I do those things. And people went out on the social media, they showed people, thousands of people lining up, and they were sleeping in that place to get, What do you make of this? Maybe you respond, then I'll read out the messages, and then later we just go Zoom to.
Yeah, yeah. And I like the point a professor made about that most of these policies has weakened Nigerian fabric. We followed out the middle class, and also even brought on toward immiseration or poverty of the people. I feel that the government should have reflected a lot about that. Because what we are seeing right now in terms of pain and despair and hopelessness that people feel is unprecedented. When people make a case that first subsidy is a thing for the rich, I think no. Because we know that once you remove fuel subsidy, it has a huge effect on the general price of goods and services in the country. It has what we call a flywheel effect in economics. So it's challenging, it's dangerous for us to think it will not affect the poor. I feel like a lot of things that government has come as palliative was not well thought. And that's what you get. Even the very first day you move first subsidy, you are not sat down with the organized labor. You have not sat down with the citizens. You have not sat down with civil society. You have not engaged government. So you move first subsidy. And you now that we are chasing a moving van. Because it took you almost 6 months or even more than that, almost over a year, to technically, it was just September last year that the implementation of the program started. It was just this month. The NYC graduates now receive 80,000 naira. So it took the lag between pushing the palliative and when we started the program. That it was just the gap was just too much. Also, you could also look at the attendant effect of more subsidy. Even on capital project implementation, if you build a road for 200 million 2 years ago or 4 years ago, that same road might be up double the amount you require to build that same road as much as possible. So there are implications of this decision, and we'll have started with much more experts, because you tamper with two variables at the same time, and because of that, you devalue the currency. At the same time, you move for subsidy. They both work hand in hand, because if somebody needed £1 billion to import a cargo of fuel, definitely you now need 3 times or thrice that amount to do the same amount of something. We put more pressure on the FX market. So I don't think the government thought through how to sequence it or how to even build like a holistic palliative mechanism into it. A lot of Nigerians are suffering, and that's why we know that when we talk about economics, it's not a victimless discipline. If it's not properly handled, it creates a whole lot of crisis for the society, as we have seen in many geographies. Yeah.
Are due for break after I read out these messages. Meanwhile, let hands be raised up if you would want to comment. Immediately after I read out 2 or 3 or 4 messages, we will go on break, then resume to go to the interactions. I got this from Shina Olaoshun. What can Professor Kperogi say about the Nigeria Customs Service's introduction of free on board levy? This levy will be imposed on all importation goods, and what is the impact on the economy as it relates to businesses? I have this from Professor Olushola Oyewole. The state of the nation today is the outcome of policies of the current government in power. Unfortunately, many policies have been rolled out without deep thoughts and wisdom on the effects of the policies on the people. The problem of Nigeria goes beyond policy, as the policies are driven by people who have perfected corruption in public office. Nigeria needs a leadership that will be sincere to deal with corruption in leadership. I think Professor Oyewole can say that again. Borrowing to Ṣeun and Farooq. With all this plethora of problems bedeviling our people and plaguing the country itself, What are your pieces of advice to President Bola Tinubu and generally to our political leaders, particularly the governors, in easing life for fellow Nigerians? I hope you are diarising that. I doubt, this one is from Lake Confijabi. I doubt if our political leaders ever listen to any advice. Well, from Najim, we all know what's wrong and ways to correct them. How do we get a leader to effect the necessary reform? As Professor Farooq said, it can't last a week if given the opportunity. That's Najim from USA. And finally, we have this from Adekunle. Nigeria is a society that takes away subsidy from the poor and gives subsidies to the rich and political elites. Professor Farooq Kperogi speaks on boiling point arena. Okay, that's a quotable quote. Well, on this note, let's just take a minute and a half and then have a break, and then we'll come back for the interactions. I hope, Dr. Ariyo, you are not yet tired.
No. I'm good to go for the next 10 hours.
Thank you so much. Well, let's have the break. Thank you.
And join the fun on Back 96.7, your number one buzz health radio.
This is Boiling Point, the global platform where we invite the best of professionals to look at specific issues bordering our country, Nigeria. Tonight, we're hosting Professor Kperogi and Mr. Ṣeun Onigbinde, our man at budgets. We'll be allowing a couple of minutes for interaction whereby our global audience can call in and ask questions, okay? We've read some of your messages. If Prof and Ṣeun can pick any of them, you can also respond to them before we go further. We'll do this for just 10 minutes. Thank you.
Well, someone asked, what piece of advice can I give the president? Well, maybe the questioner probably isn't familiar with me. I write a weekly column on the back page of Saturday Tribune, and there's almost no piece of advice that there is to give that I haven't given. Right before President Tinubu took over power, read the column I wrote on April 29. That was exactly a month before he took over, where I warned exactly about the things that are happening right now. I warn against the removal of subsidies. I warn against the devaluation of the currency. I warn against arbitrary increases in tariffs and taxes, and that these were burdens that our people will find too ponderous to carry. And that should he go ahead and do that, he was going to have the same kind of effect that we are having right now. So it's not as the problem with Nigeria is not about the sort of advice. It's not a lack of pieces of advice for people in power. It's not even a lack of policy positions. It's about the will to implement these policies, these positions, these pieces of advice. And I think people in positions of power are ensconced. They live in splendid isolation. They live in their own echo chambers. They love to hear the sound of their voices. They love to have people worship them and tell them what they're doing is a perfect thing. Anyone who has contrary opinion is often tagged as an enemy, and they're going to find something about what you have said in the past, or associations you've had, or affiliations that you have that would be used as a basis to legitimize what you're saying. They hate that because of that. So a problem we have had also Nigeria as an economy fluid is an extractive. People who designed it, people who built it, the British, didn't design it to be a developmental state. It was designed to steal resources from our continent, extract benefits, and take them to Britain. And the people who succeeded the colonialists haven't disintegrated that structure. So you find people with the best of intentions, and I'm sure there are, who go into government and they realize that the structure itself, the system that regulates the structure, is not built to develop. And so they said, well, I'm not going to die in the interest of everybody else, so we're not going to change the structure. We're just going to meet and continue what was there, so which is extract. And that for me explains why almost everyone who gets there isn't different from the people they replace. And I frankly don't know what else to say to people in power that I haven't said before. So in terms of pieces of advice to give, I have given them and I keep giving them all the time. And I'm sure the same can be said of Mr. Ṣeun Onigbinde. He has a budget IT that does a great job of systematizing critiques of government, of budget processes, but I'm not sure he would say that he has had any dramatic effect in how budgeting is done in spite of these well-intentioned interventions. So I would say, I don't know what else to say than I have been saying. Custom duties is the same. It goes to the same thing that I've been saying. When you increase tariffs, you increase custom duties, you hamper business, you put all kinds of blocks in the way of the so-called ease of doing business. What we have seen is that in the last couple of years, businesses are collapsing. International companies are leaving the shores of Nigeria in droves. And recall that one of the reasons they gave for this punishing economic reforms is that they want to attract foreign investment. And it's an argument that has always struck me as spectacularly stupid. You do not need to invite people to invest in your country if your country is ripe for investment. Because investment is not charity. Investment is a self-interested, calculative undertaking. If people know they're going to make profit, it doesn't even matter how disorganized, how anomic your society is, they're going to come because they're looking for money, they're looking for business. But if you create an economic environment where the vast majority of people are so economically disempowered that they cannot buy, who would set up a business in that kind of environment? So you remove fuel subsidies, you devalue currency, you increase taxes, you increase custom duties, and the people are so economically disempowered that they cannot buy, even if they want to. No company can survive in that kind of environment. And that's the environment that these so-called reforms have created. They have created an army of the poor. They have created an army of disempowered people. So businesses cannot thrive. Local businesses are closing. And when economies all about
Hello,
talk about
Prof.
recession, yes,
Sorry, I'm interjecting you.
that's
What
fine.
we need now to salvage the situation? Does the president, should he go back to say, we're going to reintroduce petroleum subsidy? We're going to stop the floating of the naira and do a reverse. What do you, just precisely so that we now just enter the interaction?
Prof,
Well,
Prof, let me
yes.
before you answer that question. We are in the middle of a deep blue sea. Going back is not possible. Going forward is also not possible. So before you answer that question, but think ahead and think backward.
He has the crystal ball. Let him answer.
I'm going to help you. He's my friend on Facebook.
Yes.
Let's just do it fast.
Yes. So, I mean, for me, I think reintroducing subsidies is probably unlikely to happen. So I'm not even going to advise that. But the best way around this is maybe create a transportation system, public transportation system that is efficient. When people can move from point to point in subsidized government buses, they have no need for
There was a promise to that effect. CNG buses.
Exactly. They haven't happened. As far as I know, maybe they have. Maybe I don't live in Nigeria. Maybe those buses are there. But as far as I know, those buses are not there. And then the revitalization of these refineries, if they cause the price of petrol to drop, that's fine. That's the same. Subsidies don't have to come in the form of government giving money to people who are importing. In fact, importation is it's a very stupid way of getting petrol in a country that's oil producing. So getting rid of it is fine. But what people want is not how it happens, is what comes out of it. People want affordable petrol so that they can live their own lives. Most people don't want your palliatives because palliatives insult their sense of self-esteem. It devastates their sense of self-worth. No, most human beings that I know don't want you to give them money. They want you to create opportunities so that they can make money because there's a sense of pride that comes from being self-reliant. And when you have a population that has been reduced to beggars, you have a population that is manipulatable, you have a population that has no sense of self-pride, and that's not, no one wants to rule that kind of people. No one wants to be a part of that. People who have no sense of self. So create conditions that make it possible for people to make money without giving them money directly.
We are going to interchange between the the mobile number of the studio and also those who are already raising their hands up to speak via the Zoom. The studio number to call 090-6099-2609. Please, technical people, help me put it on the screen. 090 6099 2609. We have a call now. Okay. Good evening. Welcome. Okay, you have the floor. Quickly.
But not progressive at all. And I wonder why. And this demand has said in the look on.
Okay, Kayode, you have made your point. You have made your point, Kayode. Thank you very much, Mr. Elonode. Thank you. Can we have perhaps Abdul Hamid Bolakale before another call comes? Oh, we have a call now. Okay. Yes, you have the floor. Welcome on Boiling Point Arena. Let's have Abdul Hamid Bolakale. Please unmute.
Thank you, the presenter. Thank you, Prof. This is an insightful, and we have always been following you from here. I think I want to just direct my contribution to the entire Nigerians here that this is not a play arena of anything. I know some of us got the information that one of our students at the University of Ilorin just last week committed suicide, a 4.5 student. And the note he wrote said economic hardship. This guy lost his parent, the father, maybe 2 years ago. The mother is a retired teacher, no pension, nothing. The friends, colleagues have been the one contributing for his school fees and everything. So he just got tired of. 2 other students of mass communication department nearly committed suicide. They were just about to commit the suicide when some people intervened. You can just imagine I, as a lecturer today, I can't even afford bread, sardine, and coke at once from my salary. So Prof have given us insightful, many people have been talking and everything. We have advised our government. And sorry, Dr. the co-presenter, you said we can't go back. Why can't we? We can reintroduce our subsidies. We can remove all these levies that are driving people out of our countries. We can do better. All you need to do is encourage Nigerians that sometimes I queried Prof, why do you still bother about our country, talking, giving insight to all these things all the time, being emotional about us, whereas you are not feeling or you are not even passing through all these things. But you see, we as Nigerians, you can see we keep defending, cornering all the things. If it is just a few of us, if it is just a kind of small gathering, and look at way forward and do all these things rightfully. We can't continue like this, or is it until it gets to all of us? So thank you so much for this program, and I wish and plead to all Nigerians.
Because of our time, thank you so much. If we have a call, let's have it now. Hello, you are on to the studio line, yeah? You have the floor. Hello, point of correction. There are no criminals in power. I think we can be civil enough to,
please mind your language.
We can't hear him.
Can you just land now? Thank you. Can you summarize your thought? It's all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Much as we understand that the times are very testy, we need to be civil with our language. Now, somebody is saying on a lighter mood, I think this is borrowing. So
in Canada.
Yes, with Professor Farouk's rate of criticisms of the present government, are you afraid of your safety in coming to Nigeria? And when last did you even visit Nigeria? But that's just by the way. Do we have another call?
Tell me himself, I've not been here in the last 15 years.
Oh, buddy. Let's have, I think Mohammed S.H. should unmute himself.
Hello, Mohammed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loudly.
You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would want to begin by thanking Farooq and also Ṣeun for their valuable insights. And I would want to add that regarding the seduction theory that Farooq brought up, which is interesting, I would want to say that apart from seduction, there is also the issue of coercion. You know, we have read in the economic hitman that most of these developing country leaders are being coerced by the World Bank and the IMF to implement policies that clearly are not going to take their countries to any progress. And also, I would want to add that regarding the problem of developing countries imposing or being coerced into adopting neoliberal economic policies, there are certain historical antecedents, especially when you look at the works of people like Jun Chang and Eric Reinhardt, about how most of these now developed or industrialized countries have actually adopted policy measures that are not neoliberal in nature, especially in the build-up to their industrial development. So it is clear that from the first industrializer, the Great Britain, down to other countries in Northern Europe and in Western Europe and North America, that these neoliberal policies were not actually the ones that led to the economic development and industrialization of these countries. Also, even when you come down to the so-called Asian tigers, the North Korea, Hong Kong, and even Malaysia, it wasn't actually these types of policy that led to their economic development. However, because our leaders and also we as a people, you know, are not educated enough to see through this kind of policies, which are clearly meant to continue to perpetuate the center-periphery relationship.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's have Kayode Ogunjobi. We have to get out of the studio in another 5 minutes. Okay?
Hello, Kayode.
Hello.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I want to thank Boiling Point for bringing up these very important personalities to discuss this today. And one thing we have realized from this intellectual discourse is the fact that we have to go back and do more about the structure of the country. Because if there is something fundamentally wrong with the structure, there is little or nothing we can do. If the structure was so designed as, encapsulated by Professor Farooq to be extractive, that means it was designed ab initio not to be able to move beyond the level it is. And that means we have to look inward and see how we can do better for ourselves. Because a caveat had been put on it before now, and for us to be able to perform better than that level that it was imagined at that point in time, I think as individuals, we need to be more concerned. And I think I should also appreciate Professor Farooq. Like somebody mentioned that he doesn't live in Nigeria, but he appears to be more concerned and more passionate than some people that are even in Nigeria. We are all Nigerians, and wherever we are as a people, we have a responsibility to Nigerians because we have people in Nigeria. So let's continue to engage and interrogate issues. Let's continue to drum into the ears of people in power. It may appear as if they are not hearing. It may appear as if they are not listening, but definitely one day we shall come to a level that everybody will appreciate the fact that what people are saying is not because of their personal aggrandizement, but because of their genuine interest in the project Nigeria. And Nigeria shall move forward in Jesus' name. Have a wonderful day, Boiling Points.
We have had a very robust, discuss. This is what we will do because even Dr. Ariyo has not exhausted himself. He still has an issue, a question having to do with Kemi Badenoch or whatever it is. But let's do it this way. Our studio time limit is, just 5 minutes more. And Kabiyesi, the Olowo of Oba Sakama Temilola, had the honor to, sign up. And he should be able to also say something to close this session. Why? We will wait a little bit on the Zoom platform so that and continue from there. So let's have Kabiyesi. I remember he already told me he was in a trip. He had to just stop by somewhere to, ask your question so that we'll just round up from there.
I even had two other powerful questions waiting for Ṣeun and Prof. Ṣeun, when the budget of the previous year is not in any way connected with the budget of the coming year, can we say we are genuinely budgeting? And Prof, when you surrender your economy to market forces, how do we explain that in the reality, knowing that there is nowhere in the world where you can locate market forces and get them to listen and converse with you, whereby you can correct mistakes? Thank you, gentlemen.
Any one of you can take the first shot. But let's make it fast. I see Ṣeun there.
Okay, Ṣeun wants to go first. You are muted.
Ṣeun, please, come on. Hello, Ṣeun.
Oh, sorry, I had to unmute. Sorry. I don't like it in the background and all. So I will just say that you are on spot. Like I said, the culture of what guides our budget is not woven around planning. Right now, you cannot even see how many budgets we are implementing, which is a very anomaly. The president extended the shelf life of the supplementary 2023 budget itself, 2024, but he made the case to the president that if you think that the budget should be extended, why don't you invest a project in that budget that I think is priority for you and send it as a supplementary item to the budget? Because when you say you're extending the shelf life of the budget, both the useless and the useful part of the budget means that people can still execute it by law. We have not gotten that response. Like someone